The Rams could lose Jimmy Garappolo. Who will be the Rams' backup quarterback next season? We've got some wild names to get into. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Podcast listeners, write us a review. We'll read it on the show. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, Bleach Report, SI, Dodgers Nation. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's going to be entering his 12th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we're going to do some more post-combine NFL draft buzz. We've got some players that were tendered. We'll talk about the thicker kicker, Harrison Mevis. Is he the guy in the future? But we're going to start today, Travis, with the backup quarterback position that we touched on late last week with the Stetson Bennett update. And that is that with Mike LaFleur being the new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, could he poach Jimmy Garappolo as his backup quarterback? Well, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, Jimmy Garoppolo heading to Arizona is, he says, a quote, strong option, and the Cardinals have interest, and then Mike LaFleur is considered very close with Garoppolo. He's saying that's his guy. So, hey, really interesting, just because if you're Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, you stay in LA, you stay with the Rams, you stay with Sean McVay, you can win another Super Bowl, you get paid, or you go to Arizona where there could be more of an opportunity for you to actually play.
Yeah, I mean, the ripples on the pond on that are really interesting because it affects a whole bunch of different teams. I think it could potentially affect the Rams draft strategy. It could certainly affect the way that they go about playing this year. I've said this before, our everydayers will certainly be familiar with this. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is your dream backup quarterback. I think he's exactly what you're hoping for because he is probably one of the 32 best quarterbacks on earth, right? He's probably one of the guys, if you're just lining them up and saying, we got to play this season, who are the 32 best guys? I think Jimmy Garoppolo gets one of those spots. So the Rams having that on their bench, having that as an emergency, I think is really, really impressive. Now, you got to pay for that, obviously. But we've talked about this before. In the event that Matthew Stafford got hurt. Now, if Matthew Stafford were to miss a season, it's obviously devastating. You know, I don't know if the Rams are still the favorites the way that they are having the MVP versus Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, they're not. But if you're saying, hey, we got to play a month with our backup and it's Jimmy Garoppolo, okay. I think, you know, in a month worth of football, you could go 2-2. You could go 3-1 if the schedule breaks the right way. I don't think that that's far-fetched at all. Now, I get why Garoppolo would want to leave. I get that the opportunity to go make the money that a starting quarterback would make, the opportunity to take one more swing at this thing, even in Arizona where you're probably not going to be very good. If you put together a couple of good seasons, that's one more contract that he can make. And we're talking starting NFL quarterback money. So that's a real thing that I'm sure that he would be very interested in. I don't know what his long-term plans are. I would imagine that you'd want to bank as much money as you possibly could. And then I think the thing that first popped into my mind was what happens with the draft, right? If Jimmy Garoppolo does, in fact, decide that he wants to go start in Arizona or somewhere else, and you have to figure out your backup, it's not Stetson Bennett. It's clearly not Stetson Bennett. I don't think anybody's seen anything that would make you think that you could put him in that, you know, the scenario we just described where Stafford is out. Stetson Bennett doesn't get you to 500. I don't think. Stetson Bennett certainly doesn't keep your head above 500. I don't think. So do you go and draft? Do you pair those draft picks together? Do you go and try to find the quarterback of the future and your backup quarterback of now? Do you go into the veteran pool and find a guy like a Kirk Cousins and see if he wants to sit around for a year? But it really changes a whole bunch of stuff. But I think the draft part's the most interesting, because does it change the way you go about that? Do you have to start looking at your quarterback of the future right now? Kind of like the way that, whether it's Atlanta or Minnesota or Green Bay or any of these teams have done it over the last few years.
Yeah, that's a really good point, is that there's just a big fork in the road if he does go to another team, because do you go the veteran route? And there are guys out there that are kind of in that same bucket of where Jimmy Garappolo used to be, guys that used to be legitimate starting quarterbacks in this league that are just at the older stage of their career. I mean, Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, guys like that. Mac Jones could be available, guys like that. And you mentioned the money portion of it, and I know you love doing this. You like looking up the career earnings for players.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I did it while you were talking right there, and I'm mind blown by his career earnings. He's earned $156.2 million in his career. I would not have guessed it was that high, but he did get that big bag with the San Francisco 49ers. So, wow, kudos to Jimmy G, always at the right place at the right time, it feels like, in his career. But his deal with the Rams that he had last season was a pretty interesting one from a money standpoint, because he signed a one-year deal worth up to $13.5 million. That include $4.5 million guaranteed, but there was a ton of incentives with $9 million in those bonuses. But he played just 18 snaps, and he didn't attempt a single pass. He was in games really just for kneel downs and handoffs at the end of games. He rushed 9 times for negative 10 yards. So, yeah, rough stats right there. Even Matthew Stafford had more rushing yards than him last year with 1. So, I mean, you got to love that. But still, I mean, it is really interesting, because there is just some buzz that, hey, maybe the Rams do take a quarterback. Maybe they do take a Ty Simpson. And if they were to take a quarterback, would they trust that quarterback to be the backup number 2 guy right away?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the offense that Sean McVay is running is designed to be an offense run by somebody who's been in this league a really long time, somebody that understands concepts at the highest possible levels, and that's Matthew Stafford. And we've never really had to watch Jimmy G play football for the Rams in a meaningful moment, but I feel fairly confident being able to say that Jimmy Garappolo is very fluent in football, that, he's been around a lot of good coaches. He's been in New England with Bill Belichick. He was in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. Take the Raiders and throw that in the trash, but he's been around Sean McVay for a long time. So there's no question in my mind that Jimmy Garappolo would go in there and have a full understanding of what it is that he's being asked to do. A guy straight off of a college campus, I don't know. Probably not, right? Now, maybe you have some sort of, football 101 version that you hand him and say, okay, this is what we'll run in the event that you come in. But I don't think Sean McVay is looking to dumb it down too much for anybody. So maybe that means that, maybe you try to do both. Maybe you go and you draft this guy and you try to find a backup that could slide in the event that you need somebody. Stetson Bennett obviously is the odd man out there. I don't think that's going to prevent anybody from doing anything. If that's what needs to be done, I think they would do it. But I think that if you have a kid quarterback, if you have somebody fresh out of college, you really are putting yourself in a position to where you're going to have 2 different offenses, one for the guy that knows what's up and one for the guy that's just learning it. Now, maybe as the season goes on, you could put more and more on that backup's plate. But if my understanding of Matthew Stafford is right, you don't get a lot of reps at Rams practice if you're not Matthew Stafford. Like he takes them all. Like he's not one of those guys that's just kind of sitting there, practicing his golf swing on the side while the backup runs practice. He's in practice doing everything all the time. So that's a tough situation for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, for me, it's a non-starter completely. I think where this team's at with their window, I think you need a veteran. As you mentioned, this is not an offense that a rookie's just going to come in, and if he's given that opportunity, you trust him to win games at a high rate. So I think you're either looking in that bucket, as we mentioned, Marcus Mariota, another name. Carson Wentz had success here a couple years ago. Zach Wilson, interesting. Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, that bucket. But then there's that other bucket. You mentioned a Kirk Cousins. Yeah. There's that bucket of experienced starters that are going to be released before free agency. They probably think that they could still compete for a job in this league. But there's also a world where you either take a backup job just to kind of reestablish and reset a little bit, and then maybe take a backup job if you think that maybe that opportunity will be there for you after the current quarterback is gone. So there you got the Kirk Cousins, the Tua Tagovailoas, the Kyler Murrays, the Justin Fields. Those names are available. They mentioned Russell Wilson too. We should have a censor. I'm thinking we get a censor, like a bleep, or if I say Russell Wilson, it kind of bleeps it out, right? Because it's like a Voldemort, like he who should not be named, right? Especially in a Rams uniform. But that is kind of the interesting thing. You mentioned Kirk Cousins. I almost could see him in Las Vegas with kind of the cringe monsters there with him and Mendoza on the same team, right? I mean, that is pretty interesting though, because it really does feel like there's a pretty decent chance that Garoppolo is going to be gone, and I do think they go the veteran route. But do they go with the veteran that just wants to be a backup quarterback like Jimmy G, or do they go with the one that still has a glimmer of hope that their career could still take off and just kind of get another chance to start win games in this league?
Yeah, I think if you could thread the needle between those two things, yeah. I get that's a really very specific type of guy you're looking for. But, I know we keep saying his name, but Cousins feels like that guy. Could he start in this league under perfect circumstances? Yeah, probably. Is he probably done as a starter in this league? Yeah, probably. Is there going to be a team, beating a path to his door? I don't think so. Would he want to be around? Keep in mind, McVay and Cousins are familiar with each other. So that seems like a really interesting fit. And if he, he's another one. If he had to come in and play a couple of, okay, like you can make this happen. Like guys like Mariota and that other crop, like, nah, man, we've seen it. He's not good, right? Like you've seen it enough to know that he's not going to be. And again, you're talking about what makes the Rams the Rams. It's complexity and accuracy. Neither of those things are like a Russell Wilson thing, a Marcus Mariota thing. Like you need to be on time, on target, and I don't see that from those guys. It's a very specific sort of guy. That's why I think Jimmy G leaving is really fascinating, because if he does, it's just a cascade of events of what you do both in free agency as your backup and the draft. A lot would fall out if that's what happened.
They need to go the veteran route. The question is, could Tua be a guy they could go after?
No.
He's only 7 months older than Stetson Bennett. Could be a bridge quarterback. We're going to talk about that next. That's coming next on Locked On Rams.
It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert gets to work getting you every dollar that you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a big shout out to those everyday listeners watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. And now is the time to join the Everydayers Club. You get access to ad-free audio wherever you get your podcast. You get exclusive content. You get a access code to a members-only Discord where you can chat with myself and other Rams fans. You get exclusive merch, and you really support the channel. And right now, we have a promo code running from March 1st to the 15th. And if you plug in the code FREE AGENCY, all caps, FREEAGENCY, you can get the first month free. So go check it out. The Everydayer Club is definitely a movement, and you can take your Rams fandom to the next level. All right, Travis. So I think I got your answer about how you feel about the possibility of Tua Tagovailoa in a Rams uniform, but it's the off season. We've got a lot of content we need to get into. Might as well just talk about it a little more, because I will say this. I was big on Justin Herbert versus Tua when it came out, when they both came out of the draft. I was like, Herbert's going to be like a better quarterback. Tua kind of got off to a better start in his career. It looked like he had the Dolphins, and it looked like the McDaniels. They were going to be something special potentially, but it's really the injuries for Tua and the decision making. He's had his mistakes and his flaws, but I think the first pro, if you're just going to exercise this thought exercise a little bit, is that if he would go to the Rams and he gets cut and he signs on some type of minimum deal and just wants to have a reset for his career, if he plays by Matthew Stafford and Matthew Stafford stays healthy, that's 1 year where you're giving the body a reset, where he's not getting banged up. It'll be interesting to see what a refreshed, not banged up Tua looks like with a year kind of off, a little gap year in his career.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for the injury thing, the injury component that I know that we're both concerned about. But I have just really never seen Tua Tagovailoa be a quarterback that makes me think, okay, we're on to something here. I think that, when we've talked about this before, I think the number one thing in the NFL, if you're a quarterback, is being accurate. That you have to throw the ball accurately. You have to put the ball where it needs to be. I've heard Sean McVay talk about this in talk sessions. We're talking about, one, where if the ball's on target, the play works. If it's a football inside, it's an interception. If it's a football outside, it's an incompletion. We're talking about margins that are that particularly specific, and I've never seen Tua be able to throw passes like that. I get that he's interesting. I get that he's able to make some stuff happen with his feet, but now all of a sudden, with the injuries that he has, every time he starts running, you're holding your breath that he's not going to get up again. There are so many potentially negative outcomes with him as your quarterback. I'd rather have somebody that maybe is a little bit less dynamic and a little bit more steady, a little bit more durable. I just have never, I'm with you. Coming out of school with him and Herbert, I thought it was kind of a toss-up. Whoever you get, you're going to be in a pretty good spot, but he just has not proven to be durable enough to last in this league, and I don't think he's accurate enough to last in the league.
Yeah, he certainly has had his hiccups, and the turnover thing is definitely something that would not bode well for him in this offense. Last season, 20 touchdowns to 15 interceptions, and really for his career, 120 touchdowns to 59 interceptions. So you're kind of looking at a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. It's not going to get it done. He's definitely thrown enough picks and had enough turnovers to earn the nickname Tua turn the ball over. But I will say this, though. I mean, I'm looking at this through the prism of, would you rather have him or Stetson Bennett, right? Would you rather have him or Andy Dalton or the guys like that? It's like, at least there's this little tiny spark of, hey, like, he could be a decent backup quarterback. And if the Rams were to draft a quarterback eventually, and you don't want to start him right away, we saw that with Goff, right? And hey, at least he could be a bridge. I'm not saying that you're not hearing me say, oh, Tua Tagovailoa is going to win 5 Super Bowls with Sean McVay and this and that. I don't think that's a world, but at least he does have the potential to kind of be the bridge. And if you're Tua Tagovailoa, your dream is being Sam Darnold, right? Like, that's your dream. And if that's the trend in this league, then that's the trend in this league.
Yeah, as a bridge, it's a little bit more interesting to me, but kind of going back to what you said a second ago, would I rather have him or Bennett? I'd rather have Tua. I think that, I think that the opportunities outweigh the negatives if we're talking, because I just have never seen anything from Bennett that lets me believe that it's going to happen. So I would be more willing to go with a player like Tua in that situation. But if you're telling me Tua or Andy Dalton, give me Andy Dalton. Like, I get that Andy Dalton is limited. I understand that, his best days are in the rearview mirror, but do I believe that Andy Dalton will make good decisions? Yeah, mostly. Do I believe that he could understand what it is that Sean McVay is asking him to do in an offense? Yeah, I do. He's been around a long time. And do I believe that he can throw the ball more accurately than Tua? Yeah, I can. If this is hey, look, we're going to go 6-11 no matter what. We're in a transition year, and you want to throw a player like Tua in there and just kind of see what it looks like, having a player that can move his legs a little bit or whatever it is, and you're getting the next guy ready, that he's the Case Keenum for the 2027 Rams or whatever it is we're talking about in this situation. Yeah, okay. But if you're trying to just, stop the bleeding for a few weeks because you have to go to a backup, I don't need Tua anywhere near my team.
That's definitely understandable. I think a guy like Andy Dalton, then you're really, he's like 38, 39. I've always been a part of the ADDL, the Andy Dalton Defamation League, right? I've never been a big fan of his, but that's when you're really, really diving into the veteran mode right there. But I will say, the more you talk about this, it is kind of quietly, I think, becoming one of the more fascinating parts of the Rams off season, outside of if you're going to trade for Max Crosby or who you're going to draft for that first pick. It's who the heck's going to be the backup quarterback, and what's the plan? Are they going to do something this off season that at least signals that they're considering life after Matthew Stafford?
Well, I think just this conversation in and of itself kind of leads you to the obvious conclusion that this is how important Garoppolo actually is. That if you just take him out of the mix, if all of a sudden he goes to Arizona, or he takes his $100 million and just decides he wants to go live on a beach somewhere, it changes a lot. It changes your timeline. It changes your decision making. That having this sort of quarterback, Jimmy Garappolo, as your backup, it's just peace of mind. It's an insurance policy that you really don't have to worry about what's happening next. Take him out, and you're kind of flying blind. You have, now, not that you aren't worried about Matthew Stafford getting, banged up on any given Sunday. You certainly are, but there was this sense of, we can get through it with a guy like Garoppolo. If he's out now, we're talking Tua Tagovailoa, Andy Dalton, and all these other crazy scenarios that I don't think anybody's super excited about. And I think it just speaks to how valuable Garoppolo actually is.
I agree. I think he's kind of honestly the perfect backup quarterback for a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. And we didn't talk about it much last year, and that was a good thing. By the way, Tua just 7 months older than Stetson Bennett, believe it or not. Kind of wild to think that. But coming up next, we've got some more Rams draft buzz, and the Rams made some tenders. We'll talk about who they did deals with, and do they have their kicker for the future? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, your inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, things like skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that tells you everything you need to know. In the minute or so that we've been talking, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. We're talking less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this podcast will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support the show by saying you heard about it on Locked On Rams. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And college basketball nonstop. It's that time of year, right? Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board when we're talking college basketball. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. We're talking rivalry games, ranked matchups, tournament games, conference games, whatever fits your read. You can mix your spreads, totals, player props to match how you see the entire slate playing out. Then you add that profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. And who doesn't like a bigger potential payout? So go safe, go bold, ride with your team that you've been following all season, jump on a new hot hand. It's your parlay, it's your style now with even more upside behind it. Here's what you do. You go to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis. So the Rams, they ended up tendering Harrison Mevis a contract. And you got a couple players that aren't going to hit free agency. The team announced they tendered 3 exclusive rights free agents: kicker Harrison Mevis, wide receiver Xavier Smith, and lineman Justin Dedich. So definitely the biggest takeaway here is that they're at least taking the next step with Harrison Mevis. And with Mevis, he made 12 of 13 field goal attempts, all 39 PATs. He went 51 for 52 on his kicks during the regular season. He was 6 for 6 in field goals and 9 for 9 in PATs. So, I mean, there's a lot to like with Harrison Mevis, and I think that we saw enough to at least give an opportunity early next season.
I think that's it right there. I think if nothing else, you have a guy that's your starting point, and if he continues to kick well, then you're in a pretty good spot. I think that the further we get away from the 2025 season, the more absurd it's going to seem why the Rams lost the games they lost early in the season. That they lost them all in nearly identical fashion. Their inability to make simple kicks, field goals, PATs, that they could not get that figured out, that they were getting as many blocked as you have one blocked in a year. That's too many. They were having multiple kicks blocked in quarters. It was just an unbelievable situation. So that they got it squared away, that Mevis let the temperature come way down, I think is a lot of credit to him. And I mentioned this a lot on my radio show, and I want to mention it here too. He missed one kick. Now, it was a kick that if he makes, that NFC Championship game is probably in SoFi instead of at Lumen Field. I'm not saying it was an easy kick. I'm not saying it was the world's hardest kick. I don't know if it was the pressure of the moment. It was the first one that he was ever really asked to kick under a great deal of pressure, or maybe he just missed. Sometimes they miss, and it has nothing to do with anything. You just miss along the way, because we saw him make pressure kicks in Chicago. We saw him make pressure kicks in Carolina in the playoffs. So I know that he can make a kick under pressure. So I'm happy to bring him back. I'm happy to have him in the mix. But I also don't think that you close the door to other opportunities if something shakes loose. But at least if nothing else, you meet the minimum basic requirement of, can we make field goals under 45 yards and can we make them consistently? The answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that the Rams are an interesting spot from a kicker standpoint, because we've seen the highest of highs with Greg the Leg. We've seen the lowest of lows with Brett Maher and Joshua Carty. We've kind of seen everything in between at this point. But you're right. I mean, that kick against the Seahawks, not like it was a 50 or 60-yard kick. It was a 48-yard kick, and they kept the game tied. They definitely needed that situation. And I think really the question is, do the Rams want a kicker that's going to be a weapon, or they just want a kicker that's going to be serviceable and make the makeables? And I think he has the potential to make the makeables, and just so far I haven't seen him be that weapon. But there were some times in the other league that he was in that he did make some pretty massive kicks, and they really have to give those opportunities to see if he can hit those kicks. So that's something that I think is reserved for the first 6 to 8 games of the regular season, and we'll see if he can do it.
I think that's a great point. I really do. Like, you have to be willing to deploy him as a weapon to give him a chance to be a weapon. And, we really haven't seen Sean McVay wants touchdowns. Like, I've never seen somebody through the gritted teeth run out the field goal team more than Sean McVay. It almost feels like he's, conceding or giving up to try to go get his field goal. And I get it. I will admit that Sean McVay knows more about this than me, that he knows more about this than just about everybody. But I do need somebody to explain to me, Doug, why 3 points is worse than 0 points. That's the part I've never understood, right? I get 6 is better. Well, we want touchdowns. Sure, I get it. I mean, touchdowns are better, but 0's the worst outcome, right? Like getting no points is the worst outcome. Getting 3 points is the middle outcome. And they seem so reluctant to try to get that middle outcome every once in a while. How many different times have we seen a game come down to a point or two at the end, and you've given away points early in the game by not kicking a field goal or going for it on fourth down? And I get it that the days of the 70s and 80s where you just do what's right in front of you, never go for it on fourth down, you kick PATs. I understand that it's changed a little bit, but has it changed so much that 3 points are a bad deal? I don't think it has. I'd like to see him try to deploy Mevis as a weapon. The Brandon Aubrey in Dallas getting franchise tagged or whatever, like he's a really interesting one. Like imagine getting to the 50-yard line and knowing you have 3 points in your back pocket. That's fascinating to me. That is a weapon. And I know that Mevis doesn't have a leg like that, but trying some 50, I get the field position argument, all of it, but let's see what kind of leg the thicker kicker has and give him some chances.
Exactly. I mean, that's how you build that confidence, because you need them to program themselves knowing that, hey, I can make these big kicks in big situations, because it's like, hey, it's like the postseason in baseball with the Dodgers, right? It's like you can't score 10 runs against every team. You're not playing the Rockies every game, right? Sometimes it's a pitcher's duel. And when you got that pitcher's duel in the NFL playoffs, you got to have the guy to make some kicks. So, yeah, I totally agree with you that it is Sean McVay's DNA. There's no doubt about that. But I think for this offense to just be clicking on all cylinders and win all three phases of the game, you got to give that kicker, whoever it may be, hopefully Harrison Mevis grows into that guy, those opportunities. By the way, here is a message to the Rams strength and conditioning department. Don't mess with Harrison Mevis, okay? Keep him the thicker kicker. He would lose his aura if he wasn't the thicker kicker, right? So I'm just saying, like, don't put him on some strength and conditioning. Don't change his diet. Don't touch him. Just allow him to go make kicks. Remember Jared Lorenzen, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he lost weight, lost his aura. You know what I mean?
The Pillsbury throw boy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's such a banger, dude. Oh, my Lord. That's so good.
It's an incredible nickname. Yeah. Leave him alone. Let him do his thing. And I just want to give you a quick little pat on the back, D-Mac, and say that you snuck it in under the wire with a Dodger mention. It was very well done.
Hey, we were coming close to the wire, man. I got the producer right here. I was kind of scared. By the way, I can't wait to hear the comments down below about the talk about Tua Tagovailoa being a Ram. By the way, fun fact about Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa is a Hawaiian name that translates to Tim Tebow. By the way, just so you know. I mean, but no, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I can't wait to see the Rams' backup quarterback. I mean, I really can't wait to see it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again on this show. I know that Travis wants Jimmy G, though. You feel like a big Jimmy G guy.
I am. Tell me, like, I have this long-standing theory that if you said I could be one famous athlete and just change spots with him like that, I know who I would pick. It's always been the golfer Adam Scott. That he's handsome, he's tall, he's in good shape, and he's famous enough to open doors when he needs to open doors, but he's anonymous enough that he can go wherever he wants and no one's ever going to buy him or bother him, and he's got all the money in the bank. Jimmy G might be my next choice. Now, Jimmy G might be a little too famous, like I think, and maybe a little too handsome that you walk in and everybody's going to be like, "Whoa, who's that?" But he's on the list. I'm a Jimmy G guy for sure.
That's a good one. I think I'd be Tony Hawk. That's such a crazy pull, but zero haters. Like, that's the thing. I couldn't deal with the Twitter hate. I need zero haters, and he's got like literally zero haters.
Tony Hawk is a great choice. Tony Hawk is crazy rich. But here's the thing with Tony Hawk. I think everybody knows Tony. Like, Tony Hawk walks into a restaurant, everybody's like, holy blank, that's Tony Hawk. I don't think anybody knows it's Adam Scott when they walk into a restaurant. And I want my anonymity.
Oh, that's so that's so funny. So that's where we're different. I'll tell you, my big hack that I do at restaurants is if we're at a Mexican restaurant, I always order the fajitas. And it's not because I want to eat the fajitas. It's because, like, when you order the fajitas, you're like the life of the party. Like, everyone looks like you're that guy. It's the equivalent of when you're at a club and there's bottle service and they have like the champagne with the sparklers. That's why I order the fajita. So if I was the guy that didn't get the attention, I'd be like, that's what I'm here for. You know what I mean? Like, give me like prime, like, David, I know you saw Shohei go into that restaurant.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, no,
dude.
I don't need that in my life. I don't need that.
All right, so a little different there, but yeah, coming up on tomorrow's episode, if we were to switch places with one Ram in the history, we'll answer that question tomorrow. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams on Wednesday's episode. But until next time, my name is Doug McCaney. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA, and you follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.